Hello and welcome to TVP World News. I'm your host, Diana Skaya. Outgoing German Chancellor Olaf Scholz will visit Poland on Wednesday for talks with Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk. This will be one of his last official engagements as the German leader. Now, the meeting between Chancellor Scholz and Prime Minister Tusk will focus on strengthening bilateral relations and addressing key international issues. European policy, including security and defense, is expected to be high on the agenda. The visit will be Scholz's final trip to Poland in his current role, coming just 3 weeks before Friedrich Merz is expected to be sworn in as Germany's next chancellor in the first week of May. The potential date for U.S. President Donald Trump's visit to Poland has been revealed. Trump is expected to travel to Warsaw after May 15th, according to Polish President Andrzej Duda's office. Now, Duda invited his American counterpart to Poland during their meeting in Washington in February. The Polish leader said back then that the possible dates for the visit are the April 3C summit in Warsaw or the June NATO summit in The Hague. However, President Trump recently announced plans to travel to Saudi Arabia in mid-May on his first foreign trip since returning to the White House. This means that his visit to Poland will take place afterward, but talks are still underway, according to President Duda's office.
Gentlemen, he's doing a fantastic job. The people of Poland love him. They really do. They really love you. And that's not an easy thing to accomplish, but he's done a fantastic job, and he's my friend.
3 people were wounded and fires erupted in residential buildings after Russia launched an overnight drone strike on the Ukrainian city of Odessa, yet another assault on a city vital to Ukraine's grain exports. Now, shortly before 1 a.m. local time, the Ukrainian Air Force reported multiple Shahid drones approaching Odessa from the Black Sea. Later that night, the city's mayor, Gennady Trukhanov, urged residents in 2 districts of the city to find shelter. According to the official, rescue workers, psychologists, and police are still on the scene clearing the rubble and providing both physical and emotional support to the wounded. A media investigation has uncovered that North Korea provided Russia with millions of rounds of ammunition, bolstering Moscow's war effort. Meanwhile, President Volodymyr Zelensky and NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte visited Odessa on Tuesday to meet with wounded Ukrainian defenders.
NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte and President Volodymyr Zelensky visit wounded soldiers in Odessa on Tuesday. Many of them may have been maimed or injured by shells supplied by North Korea. A giant explosion lights up the night sky in Russia's southeastern Krasnodar region. The Tikhorets base was a major supply hub routing millions of North Korean shells and supplies to Russia's front line, until it was destroyed last September in a Ukrainian strike. Analysts say Moscow now relies on military supplies from Pyongyang.
If Russia wouldn't have that support, I would assume that their offensive would culminate maybe a year or 2 ago. So they wouldn't be able to have even a marginal success.
A nearly 2-year investigation by Reuters details how enormous stockpiles of weapons and equipment have been shipped from North Korea, first by sea, then rail, across Russia. The news agency found that at times over the past year, the vast majority of shells fired by some Russian units were from North Korea. The military partnership came to light in 2023 and was followed by high-level visits. Experts say without Pyongyang's support, which also includes manpower, Moscow would be unable to wage war at its current pace.
They used, the 10,000 troops in Kursk region, and definitely that helped for Russia to sustain, the pressure in the Donbas region.
Russia continues to hit towns and cities across Ukraine, while President Putin prevaricates over a peace deal, prompting a growing chorus to call for the US to force Moscow to the negotiating table.
The only solution how to deal with Putin is to put maximum pressure upon him by using sanctions, serious sanctions, by isolating Russia completely politically, economically, and diplomatically. And of course, by providing more military aid to Ukraine.
Meanwhile, EU officials say they're exploring legal options that would allow European companies to break long-term gas contracts with Russia without paying huge fines to Moscow. This would further reduce the Kremlin's war chest. John Todd for TVP World.
President Volodymyr Zelensky said negotiations on Black Sea security are underway in Turkey. Speaking from the port city of Odessa, Zelensky went on to say that the meeting concerns the coalition of the willing, primarily France and Great Britain.
In addition to the talks between Putin and U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff, there are other talks in the world. A military meeting on the issue of Black Sea security is underway in Turkey. This concerns primarily the coalition of the willing and the corresponding steps. As we said, there are already enough meetings. Various formats of the coalition of the willing and able are being discussed. Regarding security in the Black Sea, today it is being discussed, during these 2 days, in Turkey. Our Turkish colleagues invited representatives of Europe. These are Britain, France, and Ukraine is necessarily present. And the site that hosts, Turkey. The military is discussing the issue of security in the Black Sea.
According to reports by the Kiel Institute, Europe is leading the way in supporting Ukraine ahead of the United States by 23 billion euros. The data included military aid as well as financial and humanitarian support. Now, since the beginning of the full-scale war, the European Union provided Ukraine with 138 billion euros compared to 115 billion euros worth of support delivered by the U.S. As noted by the Institute, since Donald Trump took office, the United States has not approved a single support package for Ukraine. The last was approved in January by his predecessor, Joe Biden. Simultaneously, the EU is providing continuous support for Ukraine. On the other hand, when counting solely military support, the United States is still in the lead. Overall, Washington, D.C. supported the Ukrainian military with equipment worth some 65 billion euros. Europe, however, is behind only by 1 billion. Economic partnership with the United States could spur Russia to end the war in Ukraine, said White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt. Simultaneously, Leavitt pointed out that these economic deals can only occur after Russia complies with the temporary ceasefire agreement.
I don't want to get ahead of those negotiations as well. What I can tell you is that they were a productive conversation was had. As the presidential envoy Steve Witkoff said last night, he believes that Russia wants to end this war, and the president believes that as well. There is incentive for Russia to end this war, and perhaps that could be economic partnerships with the United States, but we need to see a ceasefire first, and the president and the presidential envoy Witkoff made that very clear to the Russians.
Border guards at the Medica crossing in Poland have detained a hacker wanted by American authorities. Now, since the beginning of 2025, border guards in the region have arrested nearly 50 people wanted by national and foreign law enforcement agencies.
A 41-year-old Ukrainian citizen was flagged upon attempting to clear Polish customs. While checking his data in international databases, it turned out that he was wanted by the American justice system. The local service issued an Interpol red notice for him. The man is suspected of hacking activities for which he faces up to 10 years in prison in the U.S.
In a major Europol operation on April 15, police across Europe arrested 232 suspects accused of drug trafficking and money laundering. In the effort, law enforcement seized more than 300 million euros in assets, including over 680 properties and more than 120 vehicles.
On the 15th of April, Europol supported coordinated police raids across multiple countries, targeting criminal networks responsible for trafficking drugs into the EU. We codenamed this Operation Bulut. Operations like this demonstrate the added value of international law enforcement cooperation. We turn intelligence into action, and that leads to hundreds of arrests, as in this case. They thought they were beyond our reach. But 4 years after the investigation into the encrypted communication platform SkyUCC, used by criminals, we are still carrying out spin-off investigations.
A group of Serbian students has cycled hundreds of kilometers to Strasbourg, France, to protest against their government. Meanwhile, back home, Serbia's new prime minister is urging demonstrators to end their rallies. Our correspondent Pavel Chaskowski has more.
The protest ride of cyclists from Serbia concludes on Tuesday with cyclists covering more than 1,400 kilometers, setting off from Serbia through Hungary, Austria, Germany and now France. They have been greeted by the members of the Serbian diaspora along the way. It's no different here in Strasbourg in France, and before the start of the last stage of the tour to Strasbourg, I had an opportunity to talk to some of the cyclists and ask them about the reasons behind this bike ride.
We're trying to achieve higher pressure on our institutions so they will start doing their job as they should.
Just to everybody have same rights, not to be privileged by the political position.
Justice in our country.
The conclusion of this bike protest comes as the ruling Serbian Progressive Party seems to be getting ready for a confrontation with the protesters. On Saturday, a major demonstration, a pro-government demonstration, was held in Belgrade, and during this demonstration, the country's President Aleksandar Vučić said that the colored revolution is over. Also, the new Prime Minister of the country, Đuro Mačut, said that Serbs are tired of blockades and divisions, and his new government is going to be filled with old faces, with the ministers coming mostly from the previous government. From Strasbourg, France, for TVP World, I'm Pavel Trzaskowski.
Protesters have taken to the streets of Budapest following the passing of a controversial bill in the Hungarian parliament. Now, the bill will effectively ban all and any events organized by LGBTQ+ communities. Now, Hungary's parliament approved a constitutional amendment allowing the government to ban public LGBTQ+ events, passing with 140 votes in favor and 21 against. Introduced by Prime Minister Viktor Orban's ruling coalition, the amendment declares that children's rights to moral, physical, and spiritual development override all other rights other than the right to life, including the right to peaceful assembly. It also recognizes only two genders, male and female, and reinforces previous restrictions on same-sex adoption. The amendment also denies transgender identities and excludes intersex individuals. Protests also erupted ahead of the votes, with opposition lawmakers attempting to block access to parliament entrances. Despite losing their respective second legs, FC Barcelona and Paris Saint-Germain have reached the semi-finals of the Champions League. They join Real Madrid and Arsenal in the tournament's penultimate stage. Now, both teams were defending comfortable leads from the first legs, but were thoroughly tested in their returns. Barcelona kept star player Pedri out of its first 11, but did play Polish veterans Wojciech Szczesny and Robert Lewandowski. A hat-trick by Dortmund striker Serhou Guirassy put the Catalonian outfit's position into question, but a Ben Sebaini own goal gave some relief. In Tuesday's other quarterfinal, Aston Villa of Polish international player Mati Cash almost overturned a 3-1 deficit. And it didn't seem the case after the first half, with Paris Saint-Germain leading 2-1. However, a double quickfire on 55 and 57 minutes put the French outfit position into doubt. Excellent saves by goalkeeper Donnarumma and a ball cleared of the goal line in the final second did see Paris Saint-Germain through. And that's all for this edition of World News here on TVP World. I'm Diana Skaya. Thanks for watching and stay tuned for more news and features.